Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto created a criminal organization. When Naruto Uzumaki's dream of becoming Hokage is seemingly stolen from him, he discovers a new path. One even more difficult and harder to reach. With a family of his own making, he will take the world by storm, showing them that rogues and outcasts of the world can stand at the top. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 10, Working Men. Tears. Yes, honest-to-goodness tears poured out of Naruto's eyes. He tried to be tough, but there was only so much one person, especially a young boy like himself, could stand. It was like up until this very moment he had never truly lived. All the bad things that happened in the past, irrelevant to right now. This was the shining moment of his life. Naruto could only feel sorry for himself. Yes. He was sorry he was only a shadow clone and that his original would not get the chance to experience this for himself. Oh, quit drooling, Naruto. It's not that big a deal. Naruto removed the white umbu-like mask his sensei had given him so that he could wipe the tears from his eyes. I'm sorry, it's just, I'm so happy. This is so cool. Yes. In his very hands was the single greatest weapon he had ever held. Despite just observing this mission, his sensei decided to give him something to use for self-defense just in case. This had to be the single greatest thing he had ever touched in his entire existence, and that included the rough chance he had done something he shouldn't have with Mijiri last night. How does it work? Ugh, perhaps I should rethink this, his sensei muttered, palming his face. No way. This is what I was waiting for 3 weeks. All that other stuff you taught me doesn't even come close to this. Noriyuki twitched. You mean the secrets I imparted into that will someday make you one of the strongest men in the world? All of that is secondary to some souped-up piece of metal. He clutched his sides, unable to contain himself. PFFFTTTTT. Ha 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 ha. You really are still a little kid. Too caught up with playing with cool toys. Naruto puffed out his cheek. He was not a little kid. If anyone was a little kid, it was Noriyuki. A small smile formed as he got a devious idea. He gingerly pointed the weapon at his sensei's clone. Since it doesn't seem like you're going to tell me, I guess I should just test it out myself. I'm sure I can crash a party for rich snobs all on my own. Noriyuki raised his hands. Let's not do anything too hasty. It's not actually a toy. Naruto stuck his tongue out as he lined up the end of the barrel to Noriyuki's chest. I just need to pull this trigger, right? It's kind of like a crossbow. Pushing the barrel away, Noriyuki sighed. Okay. No need for excessive violence tonight. This is just a different variation of my air cannon. As you can see, it's larger and will require both hands to hold. He pointed to the top of it, near the air tank. Instead of a cylinder with a seal matrix for the ammunition, this variation has a top loader, containing smaller rounds. He unscrewed the top of the funnel-like object, pulling out a tiny round ball from inside. Since we are trying for a non-lethal solution, these are made of rubber instead of metal. He emphasized this by bouncing it on the ground. Rubber? So that's why you were interested in the guy who could make it with his jutsu. While it may not pierce skin, they sting like a bitch. So it's basically the same as your smaller air cannons then? Noriyuki shook his head. Not even close. The ones I use are for precision, and I can summon different munitions from the summoning seals inside the cylinder. They require finesse and immense skill too, he accentuated by grasping the top loader, is for spraying large groups of enemies. The wind chakra still functions the same, but it fires multiple, smaller, rounds. It's clunky, lacks accuracy, but it's idiot-friendly. So long as there is ammunition in the loader and the tank is full of wind chakra, anyone can use it to cause significant harm to others. Naruto nodded. So I'm guessing that's why you don't like others using it, he assessed from the undertone that this wasn't something that his sensei just handed out. Granted, it was still extremely cool. Scratch that, incredibly cool. However, it didn't mean he didn't get why this weapon was so risky. He recalled his mission to protect the princess of the Land of Snow, now renamed to the Land of Spring. Koyuki's personal attendant Sandayu, along with 50 of his men, were cut down by unique weapons like this. It was less a battle and more a one-sided massacre. It was not a pleasant sight to bear witness to. I have been careful not to let a weapon like this fall into the wrong hands. It's not hard to compress air even without chakra. So I always leave an explosive tag on each of them if I lose them. Naruto blinked. An explosive what? He fumbled with the air cannon in his arms, realizing that it could explode in his face. Ha 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 ha. Relax, Naruto. Even if it did go off, you're just a shadow clone, remember. That is so not the point, Noriyuki-sensei. Naruto exclaimed. It's Z tonight. Naruto's face scrunched up. Z. Yes, my code name for this mission is Z and yours will be Enu. Can't have people knowing our names after all. That means you need to keep your mask on as well. He turned to the mansion, placing his own mask on his face. It was a lot different than Naruto's. A half mask? Naruto questioned. Instead of a full one like he had been given, Noriyuki's mask only covered the top half of his face, just tapering off at the nose. There were no intricate designs or markings on them either, just a plain white polish. I have my reasons for it. Now let's be off and remember to observe only Enu, Noriyuki commanded. The two hopped from rooftop to rooftop. There were only a handful of guards noticeable walking the streets. Noriyuki had commented that when nights are darker and the moon isn't out, it makes it more likely for guards to carry lanterns or sources of light. Dead giveaways in trying to evade them. Naruto had noticed a few lone guards patrolling. Then did not appear to be ninja though, just soldiers carrying swords and spears. It was as they approached the main mansion that security became more noticeable. There were guards situated on the balconies and awnings that surrounded the front gardens to this massive building. It was 5 stories tall with 2 side builds 2 stories shorter. Naruto could make out several people walking the immaculate gardens. They were dressed in fine dress wear. Some were wearing traditional clothes while some were in more modern dress wear like his sensei. It sort of chaffed him that he was wearing the same types of clothes as these rich snobs. Obviously he pulled them off much better than they did though. Obviously. So how are we getting in, sensei? Noriyuki grinned like a loon. His maniac green eyes shining through his mask. Why, through the front doors, of course. Naruto shivered from the cold air as they flew towards the hidden cloud village. They had just dropped off their second set of shadow clones to take the second outpost. From there they had been slowly rising higher and higher above the clouds. A fact that included wind that was blurring past them due to his sensei's intense speed. Naruto was freaking cold. The only thing he could do was curl up tighter against his sensei. He just wished the man didn't wear so much cologne. The air was thin enough as it was. He was getting dizzy breathing in the essence of pine and aftershave. He looked onto the mountains that were quickly looming much closer than before. If anything, they were definitely scenic. He loved standing on top of the Hokage monument to stare out at the village, so if there was a village this high up, it just meant it too had one hell of a view. However, he was sure there weren't stairs leading to such a vantage point. This village seemed to take the hidden part to the extreme. If there was a village this deep in the mountains, it must have been a pain in the ass to reach it by foot. There it is, Noriyuki guessed, pointing down below. Naruto wasn't really sure what or where his sensei was pointing at. All he could see were mountains. Squinting, the outlines of the mountains looked kind of weird. Some had strange outlines, making parts of them more round and oddly shaped. Suddenly he saw a glittering of lights. Passing through the dark clouds in front of them, Naruto could finally see it. They reached a large range of mountains with what Naruto could only describe as the strangest buildings he had ever seen. Like towers, the lights coming from the buildings built off the side of the mountains shone. They were breathtaking. Whoa. Indeed. They are impressive, but check out the Raikage's place in the center. Naruto's eyes nearly coned out of his mask. In the middle of all these magnificent buildings was a glass fortress built like it was upside down. It covered the mountain with such majesty it blew the Hokage's place out of the water. It made the building look like a run-down shack in comparison. Not that he would ever say that out loud. This is so awesome. MHM. paid for in part by the free labor of foreign citizens. Naruto's fist curled. What's the plan, sensei? Just follow my lead. The two began a sharp descent towards the ground. Swiftly and quietly they touched down within walking distance of the main building. There were no paved roads, but the paths were laid out clearly. There was even a stream running along the street. Unsurprisingly, the streets were empty given how late it was. Naruto's only worry was that they would get caught for being so overly dressed. Here, have a nip of this. Noriyuki offered, handing his flask. It's not rumba, is it? No, just hard sake. Okay then. When Noriyuki offered alcohol, it was best just to go along with it. Naruto took a quick swig before handing it back to him. Now what? Lifting the flask up, Noriyuki downed the rest. Ha 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 ha. Now we sing. Just like at the restaurant. I'll start. Oh, we dance. And we sing. Naruto continued. Till our bones ache. And our throats sting. Oh, last bell may it never ring. The two carried the song as they stumbled towards the main building. Naruto got the scam. He had seen his sensei do it before to comical success. He wasn't much of a singer, but much like learning art, his sensei exposed it to him whether he wanted to or not. Hey, who goes there? One of the two guards called out as they approached. They were wearing the traditional cloud uniforms. Dark gray underclothes with a white flak vest that wrapped around their left shoulders. Naruto could swear they bore an uncanny resemblance to Izumo and Katetsu back in the Leaf Village. The only real difference was that their skin tone was darker. Maybe distant relatives? Oh, we laugh. Noriyuki sang, slurring his words. And we cry. 'Cause we get into fights. And we always lie. Because we're just those kind of guys. They both finished. Ugh. Just a couple of drunks, the other guard said, annoyed. Wait a minute, why are the two of you wearing masks? Noriyuki shambled closer, making a great performance to appear drunk. Man, it's so late, don't you guys sleep? They both drew their swords. Identify yourselves or else we'll, Before either of them knew what was happening, Noriyuki blurred behind them, knocking both out. While it was nice of his sensei to not use excessive force, it didn't help he tied both of them together in a very provocative position. Take 5 gentlemen and don't do anything I would do, Noriyuki said, tipping his hat. He followed suit, tipping his hat to them as well. Pardon the intrusion, Naruto said, moving behind his sensei, stepping over both of them. They were inside the building now, or they were at the foot of the staircase that led to it. A very, very long staircase. Naruto could only guess that it winded around the mountain and went to the very top. Don't they have an elevator or something? This is ridiculous, why no? Yeah, it's a boring pain in the ass. His sensei sighed heavily. There's only one thing to do. Race you to the top. Noriyuki bolted up the stairs. Huh? What? Hey, not fair. Naruto tore ass up the never-ending staircase trying to catch his shameless sensei. He was only a few steps behind. I'm going to catch you, sensei. Ha 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 ha. Guess I'll need to slow you down. His sensei's laughter echoed through the large building. If they didn't know they were here before, then they probably did now. Naruto nearly flipped when he saw a cloud ninja flying towards him. He thought that their ruckus had stirred up the whole building. Ducking under the enemy, Naruto spun around in case he tried to attack. To his surprise, the ninja rolled down the steps like a rag doll. Hey, don't just throw unconscious people down these stairs just to slow me down. OH. Sounds like the cries of a winner to me. Gritting his teeth, Naruto undid the resistance seals. He wasn't going to let his sensei beat him. Another cloud ninja appeared rolling down towards him. This one was still conscious. Not letting this fact slow him down, he jumped, landing on the shinobi's face to spring off to gain speed. He heard a curse coming from the man before his thrashing disappeared from earshot. Making his way up to a landing, he saw his sensei standing around a large number of fallen shinobi. He stood leaning against a wall looking at his fingers. Naruto panted, trying to catch his breath. Geez, Naruto. What took you so long? I had enough time to knock out these guys and time to pretend I was waiting a long time. Yeah, whatever. Stupid sensei. Naruto grumbled. Now that our race is over, let's make a quick detour. Noriyuki pointed towards a door behind a large crescent-shaped desk. Naruto guessed this floor was some sort of administration area. It made sense given that the Raikage probably had his room somewhere near the top. What are we doing, sensei? Noriyuki turned and smiled. It would be a shame that we came all this way to the Hidden Cloud Village and didn't grab some souvenirs. Maybe some jutsu or weapons. Naruto matched his smirk. It sure would. The two made their way down to the end of a long hallway behind the desk. There weren't any doors running along it and the lights were dimly lit. At the other end was a square antechamber that had a large metal door. Whatever was behind it was most likely valuable. There was a massive lock on it, but Naruto was 100% sure that it was pretty much wood covered in tinfoil in his sensei's mind. Halt, intruders! They both turned to see two ninja wearing masks. They were most likely Cloud Umbu. Both already had their swords drawn, lightning cackling from the blades. They looked tougher than anyone they have encountered so far. But that was not saying much. Well, this is a little depressing. Noriyuki walked up to the two guards. He scratched the back of his head. He waved them over. All right, you two, you know the drill. Come on, don't be shy. The guards glanced at one another, most likely confused about what the hell his sensei was talking about. Naruto could only face palm. Ugh. He's really doing this. He muttered under his breath. His sensei threw his hands up into the air. My God. Is this your first day on the job? Don't you both know you're both supposed to attack me one at a time? Then I knock you both out with a single strike. Have neither of you seen a heist movie before? The guards flinched. Idiot on the right. You attack first, Noriyuki commanded. There was a tone in his voice that seemed to startle them. Their bodies became rigid and stiff. Naruto shook his head as the guard pointed to himself. Like he wanted to make sure he was the one being addressed. Yes, you. The man took a weak attacking stance. Yes, that's it, don't be shy. Beyond all reason, the guard charged at his sensei like a dumbass. Kia. And was promptly knocked out with a single chop. The other guard took several steps back. Naruto knew what was going to happen. He had seen his sensei do it before. He just couldn't believe this intimidation gimmick of his worked on high-level ninja the same way it did on lowly street thugs. Alright, now it's your turn, random guard number 2. Give it your all. I believe in you. The guard shook his head. He was trembling like a leaf in a storm. Naruto was pretty sure he was crying. Pretty sure. Or you can just drop your weapon and lie down on the ground. You can just say you were knocked. We certainly won't tell anyone. Nwayuki turned to Naruto, isn't that right, Enu? It was hard not to feel sympathy for the man. He shook his head. Listen, buddy. It's just best to go along with my sensei's instructions. The sooner we get what we want, the sooner we'll be on our way. Don't blame yourself for any of this. Naruto hooked his thumb to Noriyuki. If you weren't afraid of this monster, then I would question your sanity. Naruto's reasoning won out and the guard slowly fell to the ground. He lay flat, his limbs splayed out awkwardly to feign unconsciousness. He gave the man a withering gaze. It was one thing to suggest it to someone, it was another to see a grown man playing dead. Noriyuki crouched low, rubbing his chin. You're still twitching a bit, he observed. You really got to let the body go limp if you want to sell it. I should know, I was a famed actor at one point in my life. He shook his head. Never made any money though. They said I didn't make a very convincing tree. But everyone's a critique, I guess. Leave the man alone, sensei. It's bad enough he has to deal with you. Noriyuki whimpered. Ugh. I should just lay down as well. Take a nap. Naruto grabbed his sensei by his back collar, pulling him towards the door. Open first, sleep after. All right, geez. You're so snippy. Definitely taking after Hirate. His sensei placed a hand on the metal door. Its hinges were on the left side of the wall. But as logic flees from his sensei like a bad date, the metal door split open down the middle like they were swinging batwing doors of a saloon. Wind chakra was quite an effective way to get by obstacles. Wood-covered tinfoil indeed. Noriyuki let out a whistle. He could blame his sensei for marveling at such a bountiful collection. The room wasn't all that big. About the same size as his apartment, but it was covered wall to wall and floor to ceiling with jutsu scrolls. In some places there were wooden trophy stands that were holding some ornate weapon. It was difficult not to salivate at all the goodies available here. Naruto stared at his sensei with twinkles in his eyes. Ha ha ha. Why are you looking at me? Go ahead and help yourself. I don't know where to start. I just want to take all of it. Well, I wouldn't stop you, and it's not like the Cloud Village will truly care if you take them or not. Naruto tilted his head. Why wouldn't they care? This is their vault of awesome jutsu, right? Not exactly. His sensei stepped into the room, walking over to the far wall. He schemed the shelves, humming to himself. Eventually, pulled one out from the racks and unrolled it. He nodded before re-rolling it back up. This should do. Enu, come look at this. His sensei held out the scroll to him. It looked like a regular scroll, except the paper was a distinct red. There was something vaguely familiar about it though. The black-lined crest on it was one he had seen just about every day of his life. One that was emblazoned on his old clothes and on the backs of all the Chunin and Jonin flak vests. In fact, it was sprinkled on a lot of things around the Leaf Village. This is a scroll from the Leaf Village, isn't it? Noriyuki blinked, his mouth slightly open. No, Enu, it's not. The scroll is from the Uzumaki clan. Eyes widening, Naruto had to take a moment to digest what his sensei just said. The Uzumaki clan. Placing a hand on his shoulder, Noriyuki placed a finger over his lips to tell Naruto to stay quiet. The guard outside was still probably listening. It was probably a bad idea not to knock him out or tie him up or just make him cover his ears. 3 whole weeks and he never heard a word of this. Did his sensei think he already knew? No, he was more aware of Naruto's background than he himself was. Someone like his sensei always seemed in the know. We'll discuss everything after the mission, okay? He whispered. Clearing his throat, he continued. As for this scroll, it's a high-level, complex sealing jutsu. More complex and intricate than any of these clown ninjas could understand. It's the same with the rest of this stuff. All stolen from other villages and clans that they can't actually use. Naruto looked around. There were well over 1,000 different scrolls and books. All of this was stolen? It seemed a little insane to think about. Why steal something if they can't use it? As I have taught you. Just because you don't know how to do something doesn't mean you shouldn't learn about what others can do. They most likely stole these to get insight or an advantage over their enemies. Others were most likely pilfered as spoils of battle. Again, pretty standard for hidden villages. So I should only take things I could actually use. Noriyuki shrugged. Up to you. I can see that the wall on the right has jutsu taken from the Land of Wind. There is a good chance it may contain some wind jutsu for you to use. Probably something powerful. Powerful jutsu. It didn't matter if Naruto was 12 years old or 112, there was something exciting about them. So many options, he thought, a little overwhelmed. He had to think logically about this. These could be invaluable jutsu to his survival and success. It didn't help that they were all different and weren't labeled. I'll just take all of them. Sensei can seal them all up for me. Logic won out in this instance. Oh. My. God. Is this what I think it is? His sensei shouted as he stuffed his arms. Naruto glanced around to see his sensei admiring a large rectangular wooden box. He had placed it on top of a stack of large papers. Holy shit. It is. What is it, sensei? Spinning the box around, Naruto saw what made his sensei so giddy. He cocked an eyebrow, wondering what sort of monstrosity would catch his teacher's interest. Of course it was something that Naruto just didn't get or have any interest in. Apparent, by his dull stare. A shamisen, wow. Of course his sensei would be excited about a musical instrument. He had 3 weeks of experiences to know how varied those interests were. Art, dance, music, magic tricks, and more. If he hadn't threatened the manager of that family restaurant with the outcome of never-ending torture, he would have thought Noriyuki was a traveling circus performer. Probably the position of ring master because he knew he had a suit for it. He would probably enjoy the job too. Maybe grow a mustache. Where was he going with this? Snap, snap. Focus, Enu. You drifted for a moment. And anyway. This isn't just a regular shamisen. Take a closer look. Indeed, it was different from his sensei's normal one. A normal shamisen had 3 strings. This one had double the amount. It was jet black with red streaks running along the length of the body and neck. With the extra strings, it meant there were 3 more pegs to tune it. So it's a bit different. Why are you making a big deal about it? This shamisen belonged to the first Raikage. It was a weapon of great power that was used to unite the different tribes and clans in this area. With this I was able to call down a special type of lightning that was near unbeatable. When I told you that those who master their elements have no weaknesses, well, it was from him that I learned that lesson. A music-based weapon. Naruto wasn't sure how to feel about that. There was only one group of people he knew used sound as a weapon, and they belonged to Orochimaru's group. He knew they were effective for genjutsu, but calling down lightning from the sky? That seemed like a bit of a stretch. His sensei seemed to know a lot about it though. You knew the first Raikage? Noriyuki gave a small nod. He gently picked up the instrument like it was made of glass. He and I were good friends once. Best friends. The man was a literal rock star, and he and I would play our music together. He had rhythm, good songs, and was the most stylish person I knew. Many Kage sacrificed their personal values for the sake of their villages, but he towed the line and always let his passions guide his values. You miss him, Naruto surmised from his sensei's tone. I do. Not many know this, but he. Noriyuki paused, a scowl etched on his face. Like a bitter memory had taken hold of him, he died protecting me. It was a great loss to the continent. Not many knew this, but he always believed that he could unite people through music. That their shared emotions could be summoned forth when he played. Naruto frowned. He sounded like a good person. It was a hard pill to swallow that his country fell to this level. He wanted to ask what happened, but like everything else, it was a story for later. Regardless, I think it's only prudent that I take this back into my custody. Take it back? I thought it belonged to the first Raikage. It did. I had a hand in making it though. You could say it took more than I's mastery of lightning jutsu to make full use of its power. Power that gave this shamisen the name of aka Inazuma to those that feared it. Aka Inazuma, the red lightning caller, Naruto muttered. Now that was a cool name. Do you know how to use it then, sensei? Noriyuki smirked. I'm probably the only one who knows how. Since it's locked in here, I guess they never knew the secret. Secret? Later, Enu. For now, let's get those scrolls sealed up. Ha ha ha. I can see you lacked restraint. A good mentality for a thief. Naruto placed them down as his sensei packed up the shamisen. He had no real knowledge of the Raikage, granted he had no real knowledge of any of the Kage except for the Hokage. Noriyuki seemed to have met pretty much all of them. A strange occurrence, seeing as any previous mention of them usually involved calling them amateurs or idiots. Alright. Now off to harass the Raikage. Let's bounce. The two exited the room. Noriyuki, trying to be funny, moved the two halves of the solid metal door so that they fit into place like he never cut them. Naruto really didn't see the point. His sensei made some offhanded comment on it being the polite thing to do and the cost of heating a building this size being murder. The two stepped over the still conscious guard lying prone on the floor. Keep up the good work, Noriyuki said. Naruto followed suit. You'll get M next time, he encouraged. Although I wouldn't count on it, muttering that last part quietly to himself. What was that? I frowned, turning his head towards the door. What was what, my lord? His assistant, Mabi asked. I paused, trying to listen carefully for something. After a few moments of silence he shook his head. It's nothing. I could have sworn I heard laughing. Shall I go check on it, sir? HRRR. No, it's nothing. I need status updates now. Is there any more confirmation on these alerts? This seems unbelievable that so many places are requesting assistance. Especially this so-called invasion force. He stood arms crossed waiting impatiently as the intelligence officer waited for further communication from Post Station 2. There had been an urgent message that a large group of enemy forces had just crossed the border into the Land of Lightning. It had come out of nowhere and at the worst time as well. B and Yujito were still out on assignments and a lot of his best people were already assigned tasks crucial to the nation's security. For now though he needed a better estimation of what they were dealing with before he brought down the Iron Claw. Sir, we have further intel. His spectacled communication officer Sho exclaimed. Well? Out with it. What's happening at the border? Sorry sir, I just want to confirm this. Sho teeth clenched as he squeezed the headset. The thin man looked ill. Like he had just been told he was dying. Are you sure? You have visual confirmation? Okay, I'll let him know. Stay on the line for orders. Sho gave him a grave look. A look he hadn't seen in almost 15 years. We have confirmation that over 1,000 shinobi from the Hidden Stone have entered Lightning territory. Ai's eyes widened as such extreme news. Over 1,000. Has there been any message from Post Station 1? Have they been overrun? 1. They haven't come from the Land of Frost's border, sir. Scouts have reported that they landed by a dozen boats on the western coast near the town of Sabi. What? Ai's jaw hung open as he just heard the most absurd piece of information in his entire life. The Hidden Stone had never used boats before. It wasn't their style or how they usually operated. They preferred a more direct approach when it came to warfare. Launching by boat seemed too incredulous to believe. Hell, some of them could actually fly. Like that old goat Onaki. Mabi cut in. Are you sure about this? This doesn't seem like the Hidden Stone. It could be an enemy dressed as Hidden Stone to cause a rift between us and them. It was a reasonable assumption. The Hidden Cloud had tried the same right after the Third Great Ninja War ended. Since they didn't want their prints on it, they opted to use foreign mercenaries to do the deed. Complete amateurs who botched it so badly the Cloud never bothered with outside mercenaries since. Sho shook his head. This is coming from Lord Zenzo himself. He has stated he managed to capture one of the invaders before they landed. ID confirmation on known stone Chunin. I snarled. Damn it. What the hell is that old bastard thinking pulling a stunt like this? He turned to the Chunin linked to the feudal lord's palace. Send word to the feudal lord. Have guard units run through emergency protocols. I want his safety put as top priority until we figure this out. Sir, a meek female Chunin cut in. I have been trying to reach their office inside the palace but I haven't gotten a response since earlier this evening. I thought it was just a bad connection but... Ai's whole body flexed. Veins nearly popping out of his forehead. Of all the things to happen at this moment, it had to happen now. First the issue with Lord Sekiun's shipment being compromised, then all these alerts popping up around the country, a large-scale invasion force out of nowhere, and now the feudal lord couldn't be reached. All while his best people were scattered. B and Yujito were outside the country. This wasn't a coincidence. Everything happening at the same time. This chaos and confusion was being used to leverage the enemy's advantage. If Onaki was behind this, then he would retaliate in full. He had no clue why that fence-sitter would do something so reckless, but only he could pull something like this off. He was missing something crucial. Something that would force his hand to try this extreme tactic. You never told me what this cargo is. It's a resource that will help sustain our land's superior economy. Not that I would expect you to understand. Good day, Raikage. Thoughts of his conversation with Lord Sekiun sprung to his mind. The cargo. He realized. Perhaps there was something about it that Onaki wanted. If it truly was a resource that was secretly boosting their land's economy, then the Hidden Stone were most likely after it. This meant that the invasion from the west was most likely a diversion, with these random alerts being used to divide his forces. Added to this was the break-in at Lord Sekiun's mansion, and only by chance did they catch the breach in time. Yes. Everything was fitting together. A very elaborate plan by that old fossil. He would need to reinforce C's team to assist Dode's group. However, he couldn't let stone forces march through unimpeded. "Alright, listen up," I barked. "I want teams 14 and 23 to go after team 34 and support Dode's transportation convoy. Have the fastest sensors at post station 1 to reach B and Ujito and have them rendezvous near Sabi. Finally, I want any available non-reserve forces to intercept the stone shinobi 10 miles west of post station 2. Make haste." I turned on his heel as his soldiers stood and saluted. He walked briskly towards his office. He wouldn't stay idle. First he needed to reach the feudal lord as fast as he could. If the enemy captured him, then it could put the nation in a political tailspin. Right now they needed firm leadership from both the feudal lord and himself. "My lord, where are you going?" Mabi asked as she chased his heel. "I'm getting my hat, then I'll be off to the feudal lord's palace. I want you to contact Darui and have him meet me there. We'll need to secure all the high-ranking nobles and lords for their protection. I'm counting on you." "Of course, Lord Raikage. I shall see it done." She bowed before running off down the emergency landing. I burst into his office to grab his hat. He paused for a moment when he realized that he wasn't alone. At his desk there were two people leaning against it. One was significantly taller than the other. Both were adorned in fine dress wear and wore white, plain masks. "Who in the blazes are you two? Why are you in my office?" I demanded. The taller one approached with a scroll in hand. I quickly glanced at it, noticing the official seal of the feudal lord. "Forgive the intrusion." The tall one spoke, giving a small bow. "We serve the feudal lord. He has sent us to deliver a message for you. Given the circumstances, he is in protective custody and cannot be contacted through normal channels." I took in what the man said. He gave him a leveling gaze, trying to appraise him. He was about 1.5 inches shorter than he was, although he had a very slim build compared to his own. Unlike the shorter one in orange standing behind him, he wore a half mask showing a clean-shaven face with distinct sideburns that ran down to his jawline. He had distinct green eyes, giving him a very noble air about him. I could make neatly shaved brown hair tucked behind his black fedora with a yellow band along the crown. Even his suit seemed to give him a strange intimidation to his appearance that he wouldn't have expected from such clothes. A jet black suit with a yellow dress shirt underneath with a checkered gray tie that ran down to his navel. His brows furrowed as he readied his chakra to strike this fool down. He shot out a fearsome amount of killing intent. His chakra flaring. "You claim to be from the feudal lord. Why haven't I seen you before? All guard detachments are supposed to be signed off by myself." The man didn't flinch or react the way he thought. He sniffed the air before curling his nose. "Ew. Did you just fart?" He waved his hand back and forth like he was trying to clear the air. "Listen here, big guy. Save your attitude for the enemies of the nation. I shouldn't have to say that you and the feudal lord have some trust issues, so obviously he would recruit additional guards for situations like this." The man gritted his teeth, his eyes turning hard. "Unless you're suggesting that you have a problem with that because you're keeping tabs on his lordship's private matters. Be careful with your words, Raikage. If not for us, then the feudal lord would have been killed this night." Flinching back at that revelation, I lowered his hostile intent. The feudal lord was attacked. This wasn't good. As much as he hated to admit it, the relationship between him and the feudal lord was professional at best. There was an apparent undertone of distrust that sought to establish a balance of power between them. It wasn't something he liked, but the man was as stubborn as he was. "I apologize. I wasn't aware of your employment. You have my thanks then for keeping his lordship safe. Where is the feudal lord now? I'll have my men help secure his safety. I understand the delicate nature of this issue. I too apologize for this sudden intrusion." The man held out the scroll. "The feudal lord gave me this to give to you. Everything you need to know is in here." I took the scroll and unfurled it. He scanned the message with utmost care. He paused, blinking several times. His face twitched. "What the hell is this?" he muttered harshly. "What do you mean?" the man asked innocently. I held out the scroll to the fool, pointing to the words written on them. "All this says is, give me my hat back. The brown-haired man tapped his lips, pondering something. Perhaps it's some sort of code. Maybe you should keep reading. There could be more to it. I did just that. He couldn't really understand how this could be code. The feudal lord had never done such a thing before. Everything about this was weird. Yet maybe there was something to this he was missing. He kept unrolling it until he was near the end. The paper was piling up next to his feet. I finally got to the end. A single line was written down. A little aggravated, he spoke it out loud. I'm a gullible idiot. He yelled. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, sure are. Ninja art, extreme paper binding. What in the blazes? Before he could react, the paper wound its way around his legs and moved up his body. He tried to let go of the scroll's spittle, but it was stuck to his hand somehow. Within moments the paper wrapped around his mouth, stopping him from calling out for help. Arr. He grunted as he tried to tear it apart. His lightning armor wasn't activating. No. His entire chakra seemed to have been sealed away. The bastard poked him in the chest, leaving him to fall on his back. He was totally immobile and helpless. Oh, so in case you are wondering, the secret code was rather simple, the man explained. From behind his back he pulled out his Kage hat, the symbol of his authority. He twirled it around in his fingers before placing it on top of his own hat. Give me back my hat, was a hint for taking your hat. Have no worries though, I have great plans for it. Oh, relax. I'm not going to do anything nefarious with it. Quite the opposite, in fact. This is just the centerpiece I needed to really build ambience in the master bathroom of my home. It will really pull the room together. I fibered every ounce of strength he could. He would kill them. Right after tearing their limbs off and ripping out their finger and toenails. He squirmed, pressing his large muscles against the paper in hopes it would break. He grunted as the paper seemed to constrict more and more. The man wagged his finger. I wouldn't do that. This jutsu was designed after the novel finger trap. The more you struggle, the more the paper will use that energy to harden and constrict your movements until all your bones break. The bastard turned to his partner, who had watched on with muted silence. Now then. Since we have everything we came for, it's time to leave. Finally. The shorter masked intruder exclaimed. By the tone of his voice and his height, he was obviously much younger than the man in front of him. So what do you think, Enu? Head first or feet? Face up or down? What are they talking about? I thought. Were they here to capture him? No, this was probably some method of execution. His rage was boiling. To be taken out by such a simple trick. It was a disgrace to be killed in such a manner after surviving over 1,000 battles. The young boy paused, taking a thinking pose. Let's be nice since he was such a gracious host. Feet first and face up. The man tilted his head. How is that nicer? It sounds much worse than the other options. The young boy shrugged. I don't know. I have never used someone as a slide to go down 400 flights of stairs. What a coincidence. Neither have I. It will surely be a learning experience for all. The two laughed maniacally to each other. Like this was a game to them. It pissed I off even more. Now Raikage-sama, you're going to be our elevator and it's a long way down to our floor. I shuddered as the two loomed over him. He couldn't tell the boy because of his mask, but with the man he could see his ear-to-ear smile. His teeth gleamed with such a malicious grin it scared the hell out of him. There were so many thoughts about all this chaos happening at once. So much he had to do. However, at the moment he had to bear with this indignity until help came. Hopefully, he could turn this situation around. Hopefully. Naruto watched as his sensei was giving instructions to the commander of the guard station. They were the second set of clones that were dropped off to take the base. He wished he could say it was much of a fight rather than a one-sided beatdown. There hadn't been more than a dozen or so shinobi guarding the unsuspecting 3-story, gray building. For a supposed intelligence and defensive post, it seemed to have the same level of security as his apartment complex. Okay, I want you to tell them that there are 1,000 stone shinobi coming from the western bank. Do you understand, Zenzi. Noriyuki instructed. It's Zenzo. Yes, Lord Raikage. The man moaned out. The man, a cloud jonin wearing the typical cloud flak vest and a large poofy hat, nodded to his sensei's orders. The man's eyes were glazed over as he was in a trance. His sensei had used genjutsu on the guy. He had no clue his sensei was so good with genjutsu. He had seen him conjure up illusions before, but this was straight up mind control. It was like Kakashi sensei's Shari-nan. They have acknowledged the intel and have ordered all troops to the western bank. Excellent. It seems our work here is done. Noriyuki's plan to send the Cloud Ninja on that wild goose chase went without a hitch. It was kind of boring, but Naruto got a lot out of it. Using genjutsu like this was still out of his league, but controlling the enemy's movements like this. He couldn't help but snicker. Should we dispel now, sensei? Just one last thing to do. He placed a hand on the Zenzo guy's chest. A pattern appeared, forming a small circle with writing around it. A seal of some sort. After it set, the seal vanished like it was never there. What is that, sensei? Noriyuki chuckled to himself. It's a summoning seal. Voice activated too. So long as no one says, I am the Raikage, it won't go off. I definitely have a specific target in mind. Naruto didn't really get it, but guessed it was just another one of Noriyuki's stupid schemes. He always had some way of messing with people long in advance of them being aware of it. Well, they were done, so it was up to his original now. The two formed the shadow clone seal and dispelled. The first set of clones of Naruto and Noriyuki waltzed into the mansion without a single one of the guards batting an eye. He was sure that the guards at the front would have raised some sort of fuss about them, but to Naruto's surprise they weren't even questioned as to who they were. Added to this was the fact they walked in with weapons that could cause heavy damage to any unsuspecting person who crossed them. That was surprising, Naruto commented. Not really. You'll see once we get inside. Passing through the front gate, they entered a long courtyard that led into the manor proper. Like the back courtyard, the lawn was immaculate with statues and other assorted flowers. It was quite nice to look at. Red tiled roofs with white stained walls on the side. The base of the mansion was nearly carved stones that made up the foundation. Along the upper floors were open balconies with awnings that stretched out from the corners of the yard. Several niches adorned the lower walls with different statues of Shinto deities. They walked into the large double silver-studded doors into the main foyer. Naruto let out a low whistle to take it all in. He had never been in a place this fancy before. Marbled floors, lacquered staircases that alternated on both sides of the building going to the ceiling, which suspended a large chandelier. The whole place smelled of lavender and jasmine. On the other side was another set of doors leading to what looked like a massive dining hall. Naruto could hear a lot of voices and music. A stern-looking old man standing by the door approached them. He was most likely an attendant or servant. Excuse me, sir, but may I take your hat and jacket? I'm afraid it is a bit stuffy in the galley this evening. Noriyuki held out his hand. No, that's all right. I would prefer no one touching my new clothes. These are more expensive than your pay for a year, so I would insist you keep your hands to yourself. We don't intend to stay long anyway. The butler nodded. He gave a low bow, but Naruto saw him glance at their weapons. As you wish. May I ask, sir, what you are carrying? Noriyuki snubbed his head. I wouldn't presume to ask me anything. But if you are so inclined to know, these are special walking canes recently purchased from a merchant ship from another continent in the land of Frost. Marvelous inventions. They can collapse and can be tucked away when needed. Nice hand grip for proper walking posture. Oh, and the best feature though is the funnel on top can be used to store objects so that nosy thieves can't take my hard-earned money. Noriyuki rubbed the top loader like it was some precious gem. Oh yes, my friend, I can't wait to show this beauty off to my colleagues. Let me tell you that there are many advantages that dash. Of course, good sir. Please do not let me keep you from socializing in tonight's event. He gestured to the door, holding it open for them. Ha 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 ha. Yes, of course. I wouldn't expect a commoner to appreciate fine work anyway. Noriyuki said snobbishly. He really knew how to act on his feet. When entering a party for rich snobs, Act like them and you're basically invisible. The doors shut behind them. Noriyuki turned slightly, placing his finger on the center between the two and traced his finger down. A faint blue glow emanated from the small crack. Now that I cut off their escape, let's get to it, shall we? Naruto scanned the room. Using the format he was taught over the last 3 weeks. Besides the door behind them, there were 3 large pane windows on both sides of the large room. Large red drapes covered the sides, allowing a clear view to the outside. It was certainly more modern than its more traditional exterior. The light sources in the room were a multitude of lights strung from the chandelier that reflected the beams throughout the room. The floor was made of a hardwood floor which was impeccably clean. Lastly, there were multiple small tables around the edges of the room for people to sit, with 4 large tables set up on the far side of the room with a spread of food. As for the people, Naruto finally understood why they were able to just walk in. He did a quick head count and got roughly 116 people. He wasn't sure about the male to female ratio, but there was a clear mix of both. Except for the servants who dressed like himself, the rest were either in traditional or modern fine wear. The kicker though was they were all wearing masks of various animals or unique shapes. What's the deal with all the masks, sensei? Fun fact about rich people is that they enjoy being weird and unique. Gives them something to brag about to everyone that has to work for a living. Money tends to do that. And what's your excuse, sensei? No excuse, same reason applies to me. It's not my fault that I like having more money than I know how to spend. Naruto shook his head. He had seen how flagrant his sensei was with money. He was pretty much the opposite of Pervy Sage in this case. Pervy Sage wouldn't spend a single ryo on him until he was bled dry of any savings he had. Noriyuki gave him more money than he had earned on all his missions combined just to take Mizuri and her friends on a date. Food, clothes, property damage, any physical disputes, weird souvenirs, etc., etc. Money was sometimes literally thrown at problems like some magic word that solved everything. Every time Noriyuki would just shrug it off like it wasn't a big deal. It made Naruto question why he had to steal stuff if he had so much money. Actually, I think there is a connection between them in the first place. Naruto realized. Alright, and this is where things get dicey. All hell is going to break loose. You'll need to keep your cool. Just point the top loader in the air and fire into the ceiling. We'll only have a few minutes before anyone with common sense will burst in through the windows to stop us. Noriyuki paused, taking a deep sigh. If. That's a big if. If anyone tries to be a hero and rushes you, then I'm giving you permission to shoot. No matter what, we can't dispel until we dispatch a sizable number of the Cloud's forces. They have a sizable garrison near here tonight because of this party. This is extremely serious. Naruto nodded. You can count on me, sensei. Good. Let's start the real party then. They both raised their top loaders into the air. There was a pregnant pause. Naruto's breathing slowed as the noise of the party faded. Tensing his shoulders, he pressed down on the trigger. Naruto's body shook as the ammunition rattled the air cannon. The noise was loud as the compressed wind chakra inside the stock burst out with a vengeance. He could see clothes and tablecloths fluttering from the released pressure. Glass shattered from both the windows and the champagne flutes being held. The loudest noise was the screams. High-pitched, sharp wailing erupted with a vengeance as panic burst from the crowd. It was worse than what his sensei described. It wasn't from the sudden chaos though. No, it was from a miscalculation in the ammunition. They may have fired at the ceiling, but it was now that Naruto realized how pointless that was when the munitions were made of rubber. They ricocheted in all directions, striking random guests. One bouncing back and hitting his shoulder. He gritted his teeth and bore through it. Others dropped to the ground after being struck. They may not be lethal, but his sensei wasn't kidding when he said they stuck like a bitch. He had to maintain his focus, otherwise he would dispel. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please? His sensei yelled, taking command of the room. The room quickly quieted down minus the odd few who were crying. Mostly women though. Mostly. As you can see, we are clearly crazy and deranged lunatics. You are all rich and wealthy individuals with a lot to live for. I'm not a mathematician, but I'm sure you bright folks can put 2 and 2 together here. Perfect. Noriyuki chirped at their stunned silence. If you will all form a nice orderly line with all valuables ready in hand, then things will run smoothly. The sooner we get what we want, the sooner we'll leave. Take heart knowing all your valuables will be donated to my colleague's personal ramen fund. Any questions? He asked with a tone of genuine interest. Great. Let's get to it then. Noriyuki turned his back to the left wall. A man hiding behind a table snuck around behind him. Naruto caught him out of the corner of his eye. He was carrying a kunai, meaning it was probably someone with ninja training. Oh yeah, just one more thing. Noriyuki pointed his top loader behind him without looking. The man froze as he blurred several steps away from his sensei. Real heroes know when to act and when to stay where they are. Dr. AHKK. The man was pelted repeatedly by his sensei's attack. His body convulsed from the peppering as he stumbled back and fell to the ground. With the loud thud he fell unconscious. There were several more gasps and cries after his sensei downed the man. One of them stepped forward. An older heavy-set man, wearing deep purple robes with gold stripes. You scum won't get away with this. You will both suffer for these heinous acts. He yelled out. Noriyuki pointed the top loader at the man, who instantly blanched. He was clearly amused by the guy's outburst. Ha! You'd be surprised at what I can get away with. He strolled up to the man, giving him an appraising look. You seem like a guy who likes to eat, he said, emphasizing this by patting the man's round stomach. He grabbed the man's wrists, forcing them out. Soft hands and nice jewelry. Ha! You speak of suffering like you know what that means. Perhaps I should enlighten you to what that actually means. The heavy-set man turned white as a sheet. He tried with all his strength to get out of his sensei's grip with all the success a mouse would escape a sprung mousetrap. Please, I beg you don't kill me. Oh, relax. I'm not going to kill you. Death would be too easy. No, I'm going to do something. Hey. That's a pretty nice watch you have there. Noriyuki dragged the man's arm up to look closely at it. It was gold-plated, which shined under the light. Tell you what, I'll trade you this for mine and we'll call it square. I'll take the rest of your jewelry though. Naruto wrinkled his eyebrow. His sensei was up to something. Why trade someone you could just take from without much effort? It was clear to him that the similar-looking watch his sensei was slipping on the man's wrist was much worse than a quick death would bring. Here, and I'll leave the collection up to you. I'll keep a lookout for enemies. Noriyuki threw a brown sack at him while he sauntered off to the back. He kept his top loader trained on the crowd still, waving the barrel to move them along. Naruto held the sack out as the nobles lined up, placing their necklaces, earrings, rings and loose cash they had on them into the sack. There were tears, grumbling, and groans from each and every one of them. Naruto couldn't help but feel a slight knot in his stomach. He and his sensei had shaken down some thugs before, but they at least looked like they knew how to fight. These people looked like they hadn't even seen a fight before in their entire lives. He couldn't complain about it though. He wanted to come along. One younger woman walked up carrying a small ring in her hand. It wasn't anything fancy. It looked like a metal ring without any gems or adorned patterns. She clutched it though like it was worth more to her than the other nobles who tossed theirs in. Her hands shook but her eyes remained on the dull silver ring. Naruto recognized the look. It wasn't just another piece of jewelry to be bought. It was precious to her. Like the necklace he received from Granny Tsunade. Value beyond what others could understand. Keep it, Naruto whispered. She looked a little stunned and unsure if he meant it. He nudged his head to the side with the rest. She mouthed a thank you before scuffling off. Asterisk bang. Bang. Bang, asterisk. Open the door this instant. A loud voice shouted behind the door. It seemed like the guards were already trying to bust the door down. It looked sturdy, but one good jutsu and it would probably burst open like a balloon. Sensei. We have visitors. Just watch the door, I'm kind of busy here. His sensei called back. The nobles started hollering and yelling for help. The door thudded several more times as the guards behind it hit harder. Smash! Without any warning, several cloud ninjas crashed through the windows on both sides. Seeing as the door wouldn't be their method of escape, Naruto jumped over the crowd towards his sensei. In all there were 8 angry-looking ninja. The nobles ran towards the door in a mass stampede, leaving the middle of the hall clear. Surrender immediately or we'll strike you down. The largest of the cloud ninja yelled. Sensei, our guests are here. The 8 drew their swords, positioning themselves to surround him. He kept his top loader trained on them as he hefted the loot of his shoulder in his other hand. Sensei? Did you hear me? Naruto called out again. He turned to see his sensei standing over by the buffet table. The fact that they were surrounded didn't seem to faze him out of his current buffet rating. Yup, just checking something, so good. Sensei. Naruto gritted his teeth. He turned, charging Noriyuki with the hefty bag of loot. He figured the weight would knock some sense into him. Unfortunately, the man dodged as he took a bite out of a pastry. You just wore a half mask so you could eat while I worked. He accused the shameless man. The shameless man shrugged. Perks of the job, he replied, spitting crumbs out his mouth. What's the point if you're just a clone? Ha 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 ha. Quite simple actually. Noriyuki proceeded to grab the tablecloth by its corners and hoisted it over his shoulder like Naruto's bag of ill-gotten loot, tableware and all. Alright, we have everything we came for. You're not going anywhere. We'll be taking every valuable you stole. Noriyuki scoffed. Like hell, I'll let you take back any of my food. I'll fight to the death for it. I think the cash and jewelry has priority, sensei. That's debatable. Noriyuki proceeded to throw a smoke bomb which covered the room in black smoke. Taking this opportunity, they ran past one of the guards, knocking him over, and proceeded to jump out the window in the back courtyard. Lights flashed from the walls onto their position. Sirens blared, signaling to the whole town that they were there. Which way, sensei? Northwest. We set up a lot of traps in key spots weeks in advance. Should thin them out. The two ran as arrows and kunai were launched at them. Shouts and yelling by the cloud ninja weren't far behind them. Getting out of the town wasn't all that hard. It was the dem bag he was carrying that was annoying. The dem thing was awkward to carry along with the top loader. Enu, I need you to toss your air cannon once we reach the forest. Okay. The forest was just up ahead. Naruto glanced behind him to see several pursuers. Whatever Noriyuki had planned, he had better do it fast. Toss it now. They both threw their weapons behind them right at the threshold of the forest. It's dark out, so let's light this up. Boom! A loud explosion rang out behind them. Naruto could feel the shockwave and the large gust of wind come up behind him. It was now he realized that he used the exploding tags inside the weapons that were set off. A bit depressing to give it up so quickly, but right now fleeing was priority 1 so that they could lead these guys away from the rendezvous point. They're still coming, sensei. That explosion didn't slow them down. From what Naruto could see, there were more of them hounding their tails. Slow them down? Ha! That was just to get their attention. Idiots like these run around in circles unless you give them a flashy light to follow. Naruto laughed at the inane logic. Nothing made sense when it came to his sensei. He was the definition of anti-logic. To his credit, there were definitely more than before. They ran at a steady pace. Naruto could easily run faster since his resistance seals were off, and he knew his sensei would be a blur in the distance if he wanted to. Staying in their line of sight was their objective. His sensei told him that when you want to lead someone in a chase, you have to stay within a proximity where they feel they have a chance to catch up. Asterisk thunk. Thud, asterisk. Didn't help that it meant they were in projectile range though. A good thing they had terrible aim. Some even tried to cast lightning jutsu, but they teetered out anytime they got close. They seemed to bend mid-flight, suggesting his sensei was using his wind to deflect them. It was good they were in the land of lightning and that the use of said element was so widespread. Just up ahead, Enu. There is a large alcove of rocks we can use. I want you to go up top and watch me carefully. I'm going to show you the true purpose of the taijutsu style I trained you in. Why it's the perfect fighting style. Naruto blinked. The perfect fighting style. He thought the style was just a bastardized version of boxing, or Noriyuki's preferred term for it being Kentoken, prize fighting fist. He didn't really get the difference in the naming, but it was simple enough for him to get. There wasn't anything too complicated about the style. Always keep your guard up in front of you, always face forward to your opponent, dodge and weave around your enemy's attacks and guards, aim for weak points on the body. That was it. Just a lot of jabs and weaving. There was one glaring weakness Naruto noticed about it. No offense, sensei, but the style is only good against single opponents. There seem to be a lot of enemies here. I only showed you the basic movements. Noriyuki stated tonelessly. There are hidden layers to the style that push it beyond what others pale at. Just watch carefully. The rest of the way was silent, minus the pursuers of course, which eventually led them to the rocky alcove his sensei mentioned. It was more of a small cliff face than an alcove, but it provided an open area away from the trees for his sensei to fight. Naruto hopped up to the top of the cliff to get the best view. It was perfect timing as nearly 100 enemy shinobi came into the clearing. Many looked winded. He wasn't sure how far they ran, but they kept a fairly steady pace for almost an hour. Whatever happened next would have to be quick because he was almost out of chakra and would dispel soon. Surrender now. We have you both cornered. Noriyuki stepped up to address them. Gentlemen. How would you like to make a deal? I know you working guys make dick all for pay, so why don't we cut a deal? He turned gesturing to Naruto. I'll give you one of the 2 bags my associate is carrying. Naruto held both bags out. The one with the stolen loot, which rattled to the noise of metal and coins. There was a clear heft to it which made it obvious what was inside. In his other outstretched hand was the bag of food his sensei took. It smelled of cheese and was leaking with some sort of sauce. He would toss it away when his sensei wasn't looking. Oh yeah, this isn't an obvious choice, Naruto muttered sarcastically. So what do you say? You can call it a bonus for your pay. The leader stepped up, clearly pissed. You think we would betray our mission for some petty valuables? We are proud and loyal shinobi of the cloud. There isn't a single one of us who would betray a comrade even if you offered them a whole damn country. The man panted, clearly out of breath. No need to get worked up. I can see you're all tired, so why don't you all take 5, then I can beat you all up afterwards. Noriyuki offered calmingly. Naruto wasn't sure they would take that offer. From their glares it would probably be a hard no, but it didn't matter regardless. Sensei, I'm almost out of time here. Can you speed this along? Noriyuki sighed. I guess there's no helping it then. I'll take it slow, so watch carefully and see the true capabilities of the Kentoken. In both his hands one of his regular air cannons were summoned. The Juken blades were already attached to the barrels and stuck out underneath. For a moment Naruto was unsure what the weapons had to do with hand-to-hand combat. It wasn't until his sensei raised both his arms parallel to each other and tucked his chin in slightly did he recognize what he was doing. It was the regular stance of the style. He stood there surrounded by enemies, but he remained in his stance. A quiet pause entered the field as a heavy gust of wind blew. The clouds above shifted, revealing the like of the moon shining down on the one was making a move. Well, are you all just going to stand there looking at me? Or are you ladies taking that 5-minute break after all? Not taking his sensei's jab, lying down 10 in front charged him. Noriyuki dashed forward towards one in the middle, doing a chakra slide technique to weave behind him. With a quick slash to his hamstrings. That done, he moved on to the next nearest enemy who was right beside him. The man tried turning, bringing his sword around for a swing. Noriyuki slid under the man's arms, doing an upward slash just behind his elbows. This proceeded with the rest of the first attackers. Noriyuki had told him that too many times in battle enemies will try to aim for a killing blow in areas like the neck or the heart. This was especially common with ninja. The problem was that these were usually too difficult to aim for unless the attacker had been in 1,000 battles. For ninja they had 2 primary weaknesses that most never went for. The first was the legs, primarily the means they used to move and dodge. If you cut a ninja mobility even slightly, they were pretty much finished. The second was the arms, although this focused more on their hands. Ninja needed their arms to swing weapons and hands to mold jutsu. By stopping them they lose their ability to attack. This came down to one of the most fundamental difficulties for the training. He never was able to put much power into his attacks because he always had to have his hand within his field of vision. Since he couldn't put the full power into his strikes like Noriyuki could, he was told to run through target dummies and only hit them once. Each strike had to be in a spot that would disable his enemy even if it was shallow. Then he had to move on to the next target even if it didn't get knocked down. That was the part that really threw him. Doing a single hit then running to the next enemy to do the same was like half eating a bowl of ramen. Totally unsatisfying. The 10 either fell over in pain or jumped away now that they couldn't attack. Noriyuki then charged the leader with a straight attack, pushing him deeper into the group of enemies. The leader had enough sense to block with the side of his katana. The two were locked in the clash. Naruto spotted the leader shift his eyes to his men flanking Noriyuki. 5 of them jumped up to strike him from behind. Naruto thought for sure his sensei's clone would dispel. Bang. 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 Naruto blinked. The men were sent flying back midair. He wasn't sure what happened. Noriyuki was still locked against the leader, yet the 5 looked like they were hit by an invisible attack. Was it jutsu? No, sensei said this was taijutsu and I heard the air cannon go off. Naruto squinted his eyes carefully. Over his sensei's shoulder was his left air cannon pointed upside down behind him. He shot them from over his shoulder. Stunned at this realization, it was finally hitting Naruto what this style was about. What the hell was that? The leader yelled. He was pushing harder to break the blade lock with his sensei. Oh? You mean this? Bang. The leader flew back, crashing into some of his men. A total look of shock on his face as to what happened. Naruto knew. He understood now why his sensei thought this style was perfect. Wind chakra was for mid to close range fighting. His sensei could coat the blades on the front to increase their sharpness and reach. While being strapped onto the air cannons, he added long-range fighting to his style. With his arms tucked in close, he could fire at narrower angles, some nearly impossible. Best of all, or worst if it was an enemy, would be that if they clashed like the Cloud Leader just did, he could get a surprise hit at point-blank range, making dodging nearly impossible. Noriyuki didn't stop his momentum. He charged the nearest opponent, who jumped back just as his sensei swiped his left cannon blade to the right. Naruto thought his sensei missed, but that too was foolish thinking. His left arm pointing right and his right pointing forward, he heard the inevitable. Bang. Bang, 2 shots. The right firing straight at the now downed man, who dodged backwards from the initial attack, and the left hitting a man standing in the weapon's range off to the side. Naruto couldn't help but laugh at how typical it was of his sensei. He was staring down the man he wanted to attack. Made everyone else think the same by attacking but purposefully missing so he could hit some random enemy who wasn't expecting it. Complete misdirection. Noriyuki to a T. Man, you guys are pretty lame. No wonder you guys get paid so little. Noriyuki whined. This is no fun at all. I feel like closing my eyes would give you all a decent enough handicap and shield them from how horrendously terrible you all are. Never one to let common sense dictate his actions, he slid his hat down over his face using chakra to keep it from falling off. Much better. Let's continue. Be warned, I'm about to get fancy. Don't you dare mock us. We won't fall to the likes of scum like you. A smaller man with gray hair charged low at Noriyuki from behind, ready to cut his legs off. Noriyuki, not missing his chance to show off, spun around, clicking out his hidden toe blade, sweeping it low and cutting the man's forearms. He didn't have enough time to even yell in pain as Noriyuki moved behind him, cutting his calves. Mock you? Buddy, I think your skills speak to that better than I could. As for falling, well. Noriyuki tapped the man's back and he crumpled to the ground like a plank of wood. No. Suda. A distressed Cloud Ninja stabbed his sword into the ground. He raised his hands and started performing hand signs. Noriyuki didn't even look his way when he fired over his shoulder. Bang. Right as the man was performing the snake seal, the shot hit him right in the hands. With enough force, there was a sickening crack as several fingers bent sideways. Several bones were sticking out. The cry of pain was immense, unlike the other shallow strikes and flak vest hits so far. The maimed man fell to his knees as his hands bled profusely. A word to the wise. If you're going to use jutsu against me, then it would be best not to use hand signs. Noriyuki chuckled humorlessly. You may as well break them right now lest I do it for you. Just what the hell is this guy? Is he some sort of monster? He's taking us down without even touching some of us. Confusion, fear, and doubt was starting to set into their pursuers. There were still 70-odd men left ready to fight, but seeing how easily their leader and probably strongest members were taken down, it was hard not to understand why. Despite this, Naruto could say that this was a very enlightening demonstration. He now knew why the air cannons that his sensei preferred took some skill to use. Looks like it's time to wrap this up with a spin and some dazzle. Keep your eyes open, ladies. Noriyuki jumped up high into the air so that he was upside down. Spinning like a top, ammunition fired in all directions. Too fast and too chaotic for the enemy's dodge, let alone see this late at night. Many fell, or were struck. Naruto even felt one whiz by his neck, causing him to flinch. Ah! Son of a bitch! Ache! Aachk! A hoarse voice groaned behind him. Naruto spun around to see a cloud ninja behind him clutching his neck. He was coughing up blood. Taking the bag of food, he swung at the man, hitting him square in the face, and tore open the bag. He turned back to his sensei, who gave him a small wave. Hat still covering his face. Scratch, just some skill. It took a lot of skill to pull something like that off. Did he have the Byakugan or something? Was he even human? It seems like that's a wrap, gentlemen. You have my permission to take the rest of the night off. Noriyuki said, walking back towards Naruto, sliding his hat back on top of his head. Nice work, sensei. Naruto called out. Noriyuki held up his hand. There is one more lesson that I need to tell you. Just as he spoke this, several ninjas sprung up from the ground from his flanks and stabbed their swords into him. Most likely hidden before the battle started. To Noriyuki, it didn't even seem to faze him as the half-dozen swords tore through his body. Sensei. Relax, Enu. I'm just a clone, remember. Noriyuki stared up at him. Once you've whittled down their forces and taken out the more agile opponents, that's when you finish up with a big finisher. It saves time and has a better chance of actually hitting. Like so. Pop. Like a balloon, Noriyuki's clone burst open. What looked like paper confetti flew out into the air. One of these slips of paper wafted over towards Naruto, who caught it. This is a 1,000 ryo bill. Total confusion from himself and the enemies down below as they weren't sure what happened. Ninja art, bloody paper trail. Noriyuki's disembodied voice called out as the flurry of money began to swirl around like a small tornado. Naruto could tell chakra was being applied to the edges and that he knew all too well what chakra sharpened paper could do. Screams and yells filled the clearing as they were torn to shreds by the paper bills. A few more moments later, over 100 men lay defeated, covered in bloodied money. Naruto felt a hand clasp his shoulder. Noriyuki stood there examining his handiwork. Thank you all for helping teach my young student here. You were a big help. In fact, you all deserve a reward for your hard work. Noriyuki shook as he tried to contain his laughter. He took a deep breath and continued, deepening his voice. Go ahead and keep the change. Naruto's face scrunched up. Really? You had to finish such a cool demonstration by throwing in a cheesy one-liner. Taken aback, Noriyuki scoffed. Pfft. What do you know? I bet you don't have even a single good one-liner. Naruto lifted his mask up and rubbed his eyes. I'm going to dispel now. The bag of loot is right here. He offered, handing it to him. Where did the bag of food go? Naruto pointed to the unconscious man who tried to sneak up behind him. Casualty of the battle? Ha 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 ha. So it did come in handy after all. Only because if I used the 50-pound bag full of jewelry, it probably would have killed him. Noriyuki nodded. Probably the most expensive way to kill someone. Naruto turned to the defeated enemies. He hooked his thumb. Oh, and how much did that jutsu cost you? Ha 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 ha. More than we stole, most likely. Ha 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 ha. Naruto formed the Shadow Clone Seal to dispel. I was right. Sensei really does throw money at all his problems. That's it for part 5. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.